Helena's first television station. Eddy used clowns to promote the product line long before Ronald McDonald. It was very time-consuming taking bread out of the ovens and placed loaves on bread racks to cool. Eddy modernized its operation and reduced labor costs by installing conveyors to cool the bread before entering the automatic bread slicing, wrapping, or bagging machines. Bagged bread was popular with bread buyers. Improved equipment was installed in bakeries to make bread more efficient. Oftentimes, the cost-conscious O'Connell installed used bakery equipment such as bakery ovens, wrapping machines, and dough mixing machines. In the 1967 interview tape, Eddy reported that Eddy's Bakeries bought flour for the bread plants only from Montana spring wheat, which he said was the best flavor in the country. He said Eddy's Bakeries baked 28 kinds of bread, with the large white pan bread and the distinctive gingham wrapper as the largest seller. In the Christmas season, the Helena cake plant baked Old Plantation fruitcake, which was shipped as gifts across the country. Much of the facts in this video on Eddy O'Connell came from Eddy's own voice in that 1967 interview. He said that he had the role of a camp tender rather than a dynamic leadership in the creation of an industry whose products were a byword across the Northwest. In 1955, Eddy's bought out the Bonton bakeries in Bozeman, Butte, and Billings. They were one of the biggest competitors for Eddy's in Montana. Later, Eddy's biggest competitor was the grocery store themselves, as the larger stores purchased bakery equipment and produced a wide variety of bread, rolls, and cakes. It was tough competition, reducing shelf space display for Eddy's, and they featured a wide variety of fresh store-baked bakery items for its customers, oftentimes at lower prices. In spite of all of this in-store competition, Eddy's advertised products were preferred. In 1958, at the age of 72, Eddy O'Connell sold his bakery interest to General Baking Company of New York. It was the third largest bakery company in the United States, with 35 bond bakeries in and along the East Coast and Midwest. Bond plants were serving major cities such as New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Boston, Detroit, and Cleveland. Plus, they also had Vandekamp bakeries on the West Coast. Eddy O'Connell continued managing the Eddy's bakery plants as well as 9 bond bakeries in the central states. Here he is with Eddy's bakery managers in 1960. With 45 years developing a bakery empire, Eddy's counsel as a member of the board of General Baking was an inspiration to all its members. The same year, Eddy built a new bakery in Billings. I worked for the Billings Gazette ad department and was assigned to prepare grand opening ads for Eddy's plant. It was a big success. Eddy was impressed and hired me in 1959 to start stage advertising in Helena. It was a house agency to handle all of the advertising for the Eddy bakery plants and 9 Midwest bond plants from offices at Helena Eddy's bakery. It was located below the Eddy's general offices. Eddy was my boss for 13 very interesting years. He had a great mind and always tested the people who worked for him. In the early 60s, Eddy set up a deal for General Bakeries to buy the major hotel, gift shop, and transportation concessionaires in the world-famous Yellowstone National Park. Millions of people visit the park each year to enjoy its wonders. For many years previously, Eddy's was the exclusive bread baking supplier in Yellowstone Park. General Baking Company paid just $3 million for the properties from the Huntley and Childs families from Helena. General Baking, then known as General Host, sold the properties to the National Park Service in the mid-70s for about twice that amount. Sage Advertising handled the advertising and publicity for Yellowstone Park concessionaires for nearly 20 years. In 1961, Eddy built a bakery in Bismarck using the same plans as the Billings plant. This was followed by purchases of bakeries in Ogden and Spokane. Eddy O'Connell's personal non-bakery operations continued to grow in the hotel, ranching, food service, and insurance business. They operated under the banner of Capri Inc., which was established in 1947. Businesses include the Florence Hotel in Missoula, the Capri Hotel in Butte, Glacier General Insurance in Montana, a chain of QFC quality food centers in Seattle, also a Minnesota supermarket, and motels in Utah and Florida. In 1964, Eddy O'Connell was named President, Chairman of the Board, and CEO of General Bakings. He continued to live in Helena and commuted to New York City. It is a great responsibility. Sales of Bond, Eddy's, and Vandekamp bread combined for about 1.5 million loaves a day, a far cry from his first bakery of 2,000 loaves a week. Eddy's vice president, Joe McVeigh, was named president of Eddy's Bakeries and manager of the 9 Midwest Bond bakeries. Weldon Buzz Gray succeeded Joe McVeigh as Eddy's president in 1970 to 1976. Bob Henkel was named advertising manager for the 35 Bond bakeries and 15 Eddy's bakeries. Bond Bread's budget was about $2 million annually. This continued for more than a decade, operating out of Sage Advertising, the company house agency, which was first developed by Eddy O'Connell. Here is a Bond Bread newspaper ad used in all the markets on the East Coast and Midwest. In 1962, Sage created the popular James Bread from Bond advertising campaign, kind of a spoof of the James Bond movies that just came out and was very popular. Outdoor billboards, radio, and TV commercials were used in the series that lasted several years. Local Helena talent was used. Helena's 5-year-old Danny Franchino was featured on Eddy's and Bond Bakery in-store advertising, billboards, and TV commercials. In fact, Danny became Bondy on Bond bread wrappers and on the sides of bread trucks. Here, Helena mother Kay Morris and son Kenny model for a television commercial for Eddy's. Sage soon became Montana's second largest ad agency, acquiring major non-bakery clients such as Montana Power Company, Columbia Paints, Montana Travel Promotion Unit, and Montana Chevy dealers. For 12 years, Sage was located in a space vacated in 1956 by the Eddy's bread plant. In 1972, Eddy's general offices and Sage Advertising built this building on 2027 11th Avenue in Helena. At one time, Sage Advertising had a staff of 22. Bob and Betty Henkel owned the building for 23 years. It's now known as the Sage Building. In 1977, General Bakeries, then known as General Host, sold all of the Eddy's, Bond, and Vandekamp bakeries to Interstate Brands of Kansas City, bakers of Sweetheart Bread in Montana and North Dakota, and Butternut Bread elsewhere. Because the Eddy's bread brand was so popular, for several years Eddy's continued to be baked at the Sweetheart plant in Billings. Eddy O'Connell's principal generosity was toward Carroll College, which in 1966 dedicated the new administration classroom building and named it O'Connell Hall in Eddy's memory. He received an honorary doctorate of law degrees from Carroll College in 1965. Eddy was president of the Carroll College Foundation Board and worked with Russ Ritter on major donors across the country. Eddy had set up the Tracy Foundation in 1929 and provided scholarships for students in the area. His foundation continues today to fund dozens of college scholarships a year. Eddy O'Connell died in 1972 at the age of 86. Luminaries from all over America attended his funeral to honor his great legacy. Eddy O'Connell's wisdom and business judgment, his unfailing humor, and tact not only made him a first citizen of Helena, but in the hearts of friends in Montana and across the country. James O'Connell II, Eddy's son, was a vice president of Eddy's and was a regional sales manager and purchasing agent for the company. He took over the O'Connell Nun Bakery business on Eddy's death. He and his wife Merle continued the Tracy Foundation to fund dozens of college scholarships a year. They were great humanitarians and supported many local and state charities. James O'Connell II died in 2010. Before Eddy O'Connell passed away, he was honored by the Montana Club in Helena with a testimonial dinner, with friends and executives gathered from coast to coast. James Edmund Eddy O'Connell said, "We've taken much pride in the fact that well over 1 million loaves of Eddy's bread goes out each week across the great Northwestern Empire with the message, 'General Offices, Helena, Montana.'" Eddy and his wife Eve carried a loaf of Eddy's pandandy bread to their graves. It's engraved on their gravestone at Resurrection Cemetery in Helena.